As we navigate through this hyper-accelerated era, we find ourselves standing at the center of a strange, modern paradox. We possess the smartest AI assistants to manage our time, biometric apps tracking our every heartbeat, and James Clear's Atomic Habits still sits proudly on millions of bookshelves like a religion of self-improvement. But the harsh truth is, burnout rates and feelings of profound disconnection in the most productive nations have just hit an all-time high in this year's global mental health reports. Why is it that the more tools we have to optimize ourselves, the more we feel like broken pieces of a puzzle? I once spent months trying to turn my life into a perfectly oiled machine, strictly following the 1% better every day formula. I woke up early, optimized every single meal, and quantified my smallest actions. But the truth is, I didn't become 37 times better as James Clear promised. Instead, I found myself going crazy in an endless loop, where every green checkmark on my habit tracker felt like a rope tightening around my own freedom. The harsh truth is, behind the polished facade of Atomic Habits, there are deep cracks that we, intoxicated by hustle culture, often choose to ignore. This isn't your typical book summary. I want to dissect Atomic Habits with you from a different angle, one that is raw and unfiltered. We're going to talk about what James Clear left out, why a perfect system can morph into a mental prison, and why an obsession with micro-progress is unintentionally fueling a silent, burnout culture at the heart of modern society. I call this a masterpiece with missing pieces. Let's start with the first missing piece, the blind idolization of systems. James Clear famously asserts, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." It sounds incredibly logical and highly technical, but in our volatile modern world, where chaos is the only constant, clinging to a rigid system is sometimes the fastest way to lose your human adaptability. I've met people who have turned their entire lives into a living Excel spreadsheet. They believe that is discipline, but the harsh truth is, they are operating themselves like a soulless algorithm, where creativity and natural emotions are suffocated to make way for performance metrics. Look at how the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius ran the ancient Roman Empire. He is a symbol of discipline, but he never tried to turn himself into a machine. To him, order was meant to keep the mind still amidst the chaos, not to force oneself to chase after illusory metrics of growth. This stark contrast between ancient wisdom and our modern habit addiction is exactly where we need to pause and reflect. James Clear presents a core philosophy: don't focus on goals, focus on systems. He argues that goals are merely temporary results, while systems are what actually run your life. The harsh truth is, when I tried applying this in today's cutthroat environment, I realized I had fallen into a dangerous psychological pitfall: the obsession with small wins while losing the overall war. I used to spend hours optimizing the act of reading 10 pages a day, hitting the gym for 15 minutes, or meditating for 5. I had an Excel sheet full of perfect green checkmarks. But after 6 months, the harsh truth hit me: my life was standing still. I had become a master of the mundane, but I was too exhausted to make any real, world-shifting leaps. In developed societies across the US and Europe, we are being poisoned by the culture of micro-productivity. We're told that if we just get 1% better at the small things, massive success will naturally follow. But life doesn't operate like a simple addition problem. The harsh truth is, a system that is too atomic, too granular, often kills your appetite for risk and your capacity for explosive growth. When you're too busy maintaining a streak, you tend to choose the easy path just to keep the chain from breaking, rather than diving into the difficult, chaotic projects that actually have the potential to change your destiny. I call this disciplined procrastination. You feel like you're progressing because you've checked off every habit on your list. But in reality, you're using those tiny habits to hide from the bigger, more painful decisions. The harsh truth is, sometimes getting 1% better every day is just a way to decorate a mediocre life. Instead of mechanically obeying a fixed system, I've realized we need an open system, a system that gives you permission to throw away every tiny habit for a week to go all in on a massive opportunity. A system that doesn't make you feel guilty for breaking the routine to follow a burst of creative inspiration. Why are we so afraid to step outside the system? Because systems provide a false sense of security. But in today's unpredictable landscape, that very security is the graveyard of breakthrough. Don't let Atomic Habits turn you into a busy but useless person. Use systems to build your foundation, but never let them become the ceiling that stops you from reaching for true heights. The harsh truth is, the best system isn't the one that runs the most smoothly, it's the one that allows you to be the most adaptable human being in an ever-changing world. James Clear makes a brilliant observation: environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. He advises us to rearrange our physical space so that good habits become the path of least resistance. Leave a book on your pillow if you want to read more. Hide the remote if you want to watch less TV. On paper, it sounds empowering, but the sobering reality is this: you can reorganize your room all you want, but you cannot reorganize a toxic society. In major metropolises from New York to Sydney, we don't just live in physical spaces filled with furniture. We live in a social architecture riddled with invisible friction. I've personally experienced the despair of trying to maintain a clean diet and a focused mind, while my entire social circle revolved around late-night binges and a constant connectivity culture. In those moments, I realized I wasn't lacking discipline. I was just a rat trying to run upstream in a cage that was far too narrow. There is a classic psychological experiment I want you to reflect on: Rat Park. For decades, the prevailing belief was that addiction was purely about the chemical hook of a substance. They locked a solitary rat in a cage with 2 bottles, one with plain water, and one laced with drugs. The lonely rat would almost always choose the drug, spiraling until it died. But when Professor Bruce Alexander built Rat Park, a paradise with high-quality food, plenty of space, and most importantly, other rats to bond with, the results were flipped. The rats in the park almost entirely ignored the drugged water. They chose life, because their social environment was rich enough to sustain it. The harsh truth is, in today's Tier 1 societies, we are living in modern solitary confinement. We try to get 1% better through sheer willpower, while our social ecosystem constantly pumps our brains with hyper-consumerism, addictive push notifications, and the relentless pressure of curated perfection on social media. Clear advises us to join a tribe where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. But the sobering reality is that finding, or changing, an entire community in the real world is a monumental, often painful task. Sometimes, trying to take tiny steps in the right direction while surrounded by a herd heading the wrong way just leads to deeper exhaustion and a sense of alienation. The missing piece here is the acknowledgement that habits are not just personal, they are ecological. I've come to realize that sometimes, the most atomic action you can take isn't tidying your desk. It's having the courage to cut off a toxic relationship or walking away from a corporate culture that is harvesting your soul. The harsh truth is, if you don't change your Rat Park, every effort to design your physical environment is just decorating a predetermined failure. Don't beat yourself up when your habit system collapses in a world that wasn't built for your success. Learn to identify the social friction holding you back, because sometimes, real progress isn't about running faster on the wheel. It's about being brave enough to step out of the cage entirely. In the chapter on making habits attractive, James Clear introduces a widely popular technique: temptation bundling. He suggests pairing an action you need to do with an action you want to do. For example, only allowing yourself to listen to your favorite podcast while you're cleaning the house. Technically, this is how we manipulate our dopamine flow, but the sobering reality is this: after a long period of experimenting on myself, I realized there is an incredibly thin line between hacking your brain and turning yourself into an addict of mediocre stimulation. We need to understand a brutal reality of our digital existence. The human brain did not evolve to resist algorithms designed by the smartest minds on the planet just to harvest your attention. In the US or Canada, you are bombarded by cheap dopamine at every turn. When you try to tether a good habit to a high stimulus reward, you are unintentionally reinforcing a toxic belief that meaningful work is only worth doing if it comes with an immediate shot of pleasure. The harsh truth is, if we always need candy to do the hard work, we are inadvertently training our brains to be weak and dependent. My personal perspective here goes against the grain. Real strength doesn't lie in making habits attractive, it lies in boredom tolerance. If you look at the lives of extraordinary people, from professional athletes to master artists, they don't work because of a fleeting rush of excitement. On the contrary, they possess an extreme capacity for focus under the most tedious, repetitive conditions, without needing any attached rewards. They embrace the raw grit of reality instead of trying to sugarcoat it. Relying too heavily on making habits attractive is like only being willing to eat vegetables when they are drenched in industrial seasoning. At some point, when the seasoning is gone, you'll quit instantly. I call this the gratification trap. James Clear focuses on how to make change easy and fun, but I want to remind you that the greatest turning points in life often come from periods that are painful, lonely, and profoundly unsatisfying. In developed societies, where everything from food to entertainment is available at a single tap, the ability to delay gratification has become a rare superpower. So, here is the cold, hard truth. Don't just try to make habits attractive. Learn to sit still with the emptiness. Learn to face a difficult task even when your brain is screaming for a hit of stimulation from a screen. True freedom doesn't come from a perfect reward system. It comes from no longer being controlled by fleeting rushes of euphoria. James Clear gave us a toolkit to start, but to finish the race, you need the mental steel to accept that sometimes, getting 1% better every day is excruciatingly boring, and that is the fair price you pay for growth. In the most defining chapter of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces a powerful strategy. Focus on who you want to become, rather than what you want to achieve. Instead of saying, "I'm trying to quit smoking," you should say, "I am not a smoker." On paper, this is a masterful psychological hack, but the sobering reality is this: after years of self-reflection, I've realized there is an incredibly thin line between shifting your identity and denying your reality. In highly developed societies, we are facing a silent epidemic called imposter syndrome. I fell heavily into that trap. There were seasons of my life where I would stay up until 2 a.m. drowning in work just to prove my productivity, only to force myself awake at 5 a.m. to take freezing cold showers, read economics books, and post curated, inspiring photos on social media. I was playing the role of a high achiever straight out of James Clear's playbook, while my body and mind were screaming from sheer exhaustion. The harsh truth is, behind those aesthetic photos and disciplined green checkmarks, I was a hollow shell, desperately trying to mask my deep-seated insecurities with robotic habits. If you have unresolved trauma or deep-seated pain, forcing yourself to wake up early and drink green smoothies isn't going to heal you. It just makes you a deeply hurt person who is now exhausted from waking up early. Clear provides a brilliant scaffolding to build a new self, but he doesn't say much about how to clear out the psychological wreckage that is blocking that very foundation. From my perspective, spending 1 honest hour confronting your fears and vulnerabilities will yield far more practical value than a year of hopelessly trying to get 1% better every day. The cold, hard truth is, habits do not create identity. Real identity is nurtured through radical self-acceptance, not by forcing yourself into a new template of high performance. Do not turn identity-based habits into yet another layer of pressure that forbids you from being vulnerable or failing. True transformation doesn't come from chanting hollow affirmations. It comes from the moments you have the courage to look at your own cracks and say, "I am still worthy, even if I am not perfect today." Identity is not a fixed destination you have to strain yourself to reach. It is a flowing river, and sometimes, giving yourself permission to rest, to do absolutely nothing, or just to be an ordinary human being is the single biggest leap you can take toward true maturity. The harsh truth is, stop trying to become an optimized version of someone else. Start by making peace with the messy, human person already living inside you, before you try to reprogram them with any atomic habits. We have walked a long road together, peeling back the layers behind the dazzling facade of discipline and optimization. By now, you might be asking yourself, so, is Atomic Habits just a book we should throw away? Absolutely not. It is still a masterpiece. It is an exceptional map. But the cold, hard truth is that the map is never the actual territory you have to sweat and bleed on every single day. James Clear gave us a brilliant set of mechanical tools to fix the gears of our habits. But your life is not a soulless machine. It is a living, breathing entity, full of complex emotions, foolish mistakes, and a kind of beauty that simply cannot be quantified by 1%. My final piece of advice to you, coming from someone who has been utterly burned out by chasing perfection, by all means, use the systems of Atomic Habits to build a solid foundation beneath your feet. Let those tiny habits keep you grounded on your absolute worst days. But at the same time, Keep a little bit of chaos in your life so you can create. Keep a little bit of boredom to train your spirit. And most importantly, give yourself permission to fail, to break the streak, without carrying an ounce of guilt. The harsh truth is, true success doesn't lie in a perfect 365-day streak of green checkmarks on a habit tracker. It lies in the fact that after every stumble, when the system collapses, you still realize that your core value hasn't changed. You are not a sum of your habits. You are the master of them. Stop trying to be a flawless productivity machine. Be a real human being, someone with intent, with discipline, but also with deep compassion for your own vulnerabilities. The world out there already has more than enough pressure. When you find the balance between the order of the system and the freedom of your soul, that is when you truly unlock lasting freedom. Thank you for staying with me until the very end to reflect on this. If today's perspective helped lift even a fraction of the weight off your shoulders, consider subscribing so we can keep walking this path together. I'm your friend here at PageCondensed. See you every Tuesday and Saturday with new conversations. Have a peaceful day.